To Client-Side Web Development Lesson 24, Responding to Events and Using Windows. So today we're going to discuss how event handlers work, event handlers, how they relate to objects, how to create an event handler, detect mouse and keyboard actions, use the onClick to change the appearance of a div, how to access and use the window object hierarchy, how to delay a script's action by using timeouts, and how to display alerts, confirmations, and prompts. So creating an event handler. Again, we've kind of been using this with the button onClick. So we've been using the button onClick event handler. So we've kind of been doing that all along. But in this example, we're going to actually use a different event handler. We'll do the on mouse over on one of these. So let's go ahead and start with the first one, the event handler. So we'll go ahead and click on that. Then we'll look at the JavaScript. It's events, so we'll do that. So this is the events, and these are the event handlers. So one of a couple of the event handlers that we have three on the square div and none on the small square div. So on the square div, we have this handle mouse down, handle mouse over, and handle mouse out. And that's on the square div. So let's go ahead and see what the square div looks like. When we go over here, look at event handler, we have a square div. So this message here is going to change as we put our mouse over each one. So here, the mouse is inside the div. When we do the mouse mouse over, when we leave the mouse, it's outside the div. And then in and out here. Then, when we click on here, we have the mouse is inside the div. Here, the mouse button is down. Here we also do something simpler that we clicked on the small square. So how does this work? Well, first, we have the event handlers directly on the div here defined. So on mouse down, it calls handle mouse down. On mouse over, handle mouse over. And on mouse out, that means the mouse moves outside of the div. It kicks that off. So if we see how all our things are defined, when the mouse is over the big orange square, it says mouse is inside the div, mouse out, it's outside. And then when I click on the button on the mouse button is down, gets displayed. All right. So that was using the event handler. So before I explain how this one works, I want to go back here. And and then this shows you how to define events with JavaScript. You have to get the element usually by ID. Once you get the ID, there's an onClick property that you can set the JavaScript function to, so that every time you click on that element, it kicks off a JavaScript. And that's what we did down here. So if you look down here, I call this add listener JavaScript function, which is this one down here. And what this does is it gets the small square element, and then it adds the event listener to it, and it's the click events listener. So whenever you click on that small square, it calls the handle click function, which is this one function defined here. And then this, I just changed the inner HTML of the target, which is, if you remember from over here, it's this h1 tag here. So I'm always changing this text inside the inner HTML there. Okay, so that explains that. So what you're actually seeing here is every time you're clicking here, that's that event handler or event listener that we're calling. All right, let's go on to the next slide. So JavaScript supports a whole host of events. Focus, blur, click, we've seen double click. Even keyboard events like when you press a key and the key goes down, when the key goes up, when the key gets pressed. And then all the mouse events, mouse over, mouse out of a region, mouse movement of the mouse. You can track the movements. It'll give back your X and Y coordinates. The mouse down, that's the mouse button being down, the mouse button coming up. There's this load event that you can actually call JavaScript when your page loads. So we can use that one. We'll demonstrate that one a little bit too. So the add event listener, that's the one I used in the previous example for the click. So I already kind of demonstrated that. So the next event we're going to look at is the key press event, which is pretty interesting. So we'll click on the key press here. The nice thing about this one is you won't see it because you can't see my keyboard, but as I move the arrow keys, I can move my square back and forth. So if I click on the left arrow key, you see the div, the square div moves to the left, and when I click on the right arrow key, the square moves to the right. So I can move it either way, to the left or the right. And again, I'm just hitting the arrow keys on my keyboard. So let's see how that looks. So let's look at our example here. We'll have to go to the key events. So have to close these. Let's see, this is key events, keyevents.js. So we'll do that there. Keyevents.html there. Okay, so what we do is we call the add listener in key events. So that creates this key down listener, and that listener is on the entire document. So the entire page, it's on there. So as long as you're on the page and you're hitting the key, it's going to respond to that event. So what it does is it's going to call the get key. So if you look at the get key over here, one of the parameters that any event takes is there's an event parameter. And that's an important parameter because there's a lot of different properties that you can check, especially like this one. This is the key down event. Is you can see if I press the arrow left on the keyboard or the arrow right. And this is the code that actually moves the div around. So if you look up here, the div is this small square, and I give it a top of 300 and left. So this is the initial position on the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the initial position on the screen to a different position. And the position is going to be in pixels. And I move it 10 pixels every time I hit the key. So I need to set the position to absolute. And again, I'm using the style property on the element, which changes the CSS. And I'm changing the different parts of the style. So here I'm changing the position to absolute. And then I'm changing the left to whatever numbers in the left, that many pixels. So I have to add the px to that left there. When I do that, that's what actually making that change is what moves the square in that direction. So here I'm subtracting, moves it to the left, and then by adding 10, it moves it to the right. Okay, so pretty simple, but also pretty interesting. I also do a console log so that you could see what the key presses look like, because I print out the codes. And I kind of did this in the beginning to kind of see, okay, what code does it press? So what I have to do is I have to open up the inspector, like I'm doing here, and go to the console here. I'll go ahead and erase that just so you can see that. So as I move keys to the left, you see it prints out arrow left. Because it's printing out multiple times, you can see how many times I printed it out. If I go to the right, here we're going that many to the right. Okay, so we do left, we do right, we keep moving over as much as we want. So, and again, I'm just printing that out so I could see what that code was, and that's how I knew arrow right went to the right, arrow left went to the left. And then I wrote my code accordingly in here with these if statements. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. These are some more properties in the event object. So like for the mouse move, you can get the X and the Y coordinate of the mouse on the page. And then there's different things like for mouse, which button was pressed. And then the event target is the object where the event occurred. So, and again, we have clicks, mouse down, mouse up, which we've covered before. And this just talks a little bit about different keyboard events. You can do the key code, you can do the which to get the string from a character code. So the event which will give you the character code that was pressed, and then you can convert that to a string. And then the next thing is a load event. So you can actually set the load event. Let's see, where do I set this here? I want to see if I didn't use it in this one. I think I might have used it in either the Windows. Did I use it in the Windows? No. Must have used it in the timeout. Yeah, I did use it in the timeout. So I'll come back to this one because I used it in the timeout example. But I want to move ahead, and I'll come back to the load, and let's go to the Windows property here. All right, so one of the things you could do on your Windows here is you can actually open a new window. So if I click on this open window, what happens is it actually popped up this window. It was off screen, so you couldn't see it when it first popped up. But clicking on open window created that window. I'm going to move this over so you can see what happens here. Now if I want to close that same window, I can go ahead and close the window. And that goes ahead and closes the window there. Again, if I want to open it, again, it's off screen, so I have to move it over and click close, and it closes it. All right, so let's take a look at the window code here. All right, so we'll do windows.js. So the open windows, what it does is window is one of those objects that JavaScript gives you, and then it has this open function that you can call. Then you pass it how big of a window, the title on the window that you want, the height and the width, the toolbar and the status. And that's what created the small window. And then what I'm doing is I'm saving a reference in this new window variable so that when I click close window, I can just call the close function on it and it'll close the window. So it's pretty simple. So you have a lot of control that you have on different parts of the windows. If you have multiple screens, you can tell it, ask it which screen it's on. So there's a lot of different properties that you can expect and change on your window object. And this is the example we used in class. So we went ahead and closed it. You can actually move the window. You can resize the window because there's a move to function and a resize. So it gives you a lot of flexibility to do when you're working with Windows. All right, let's look at the timeout. And this is where we're going to go back to. We'll close this and we'll open the timeout, and we'll also do the timeout.js here. All right, so the first thing we want to do is on load, I'm going to call this repeat function, and this repeat function is coming from the timeout.js that I load in the script function down here. So here's the repeat, and what we do in the repeat down here is we use the set interval, and what that does is it basically, if you want something that wants to kick off every X number of seconds, in this case, this 5,000 means 5,000 milliseconds. So there's 1,000 milliseconds in 1 second. So every 5 seconds, it's going to call repeat message. So it's going to call this function, repeat message function, that we have here. And what this does is it's going to go ahead, and there's a div with an ID of repeat. That's this div down here. So that div, that repeat div, is going to be called, and we're just going to keep printing hello world every 5 seconds. So let's go ahead and see how that works. So if I go ahead and click timeout, you can see if I wait 5 seconds, I should have something printing out soon. Yep, there's a hello world. And then it's just going to keep going. Every 5 seconds, it's printing out hello world. Now I did create this reset page down here. So when you click on it, let's see what happens here. I have this timeout complete pops out. So that's what the reset page does. It doesn't stop this thing from running, so this is going to keep running because this is continually running every 5 seconds. All right, so how does the, let's look at the, wait, I went through the interval. So the reset over here, what this does is it calls run timeout, and it sets this timeout. So where the set interval is every 5 seconds, the set timeout only runs once. Whatever function you set it for, it's almost like a delay. If you wanted to run something and delay it for, let's say, 5 seconds, you would use this set timeout, and then it would run the print message, which prints this timeout complete on the target div, which is this, the target h1, which is this h1 with the ID of target here. Okay. All right, and then we've covered dialog boxes before, so I'm not going through an example of that. So that pretty much ends chapter 24. You could see our interval is still running. But thank you for joining me. This was lesson 24. Until next time, we will see you later. Thanks.